great to see so many of you over here today. First of all, I really want to once again thank all the CERT.LV organizers to making this event happen. So let's give a round of applause for all the organizers. All right, so like said, my background is more in the hacking side. I've also done some vulnerability research. I've done a couple of presentations during the years over here related to that work. But as already introduced, with SensorFu, we more focus to the fact that we try to build and ensure that some of the security policies actually stays in good shape and there's no slip-ups happening.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Robert Valkama, Senior Manager at Fortum on OT Cybersecurity. Here today to mostly talk about one of the things that we're doing in OT Cybersecurity, sharing some practical observations and what we are doing to address them. If you do not know Fortum, it's actually a utility company, mostly operating in the Nordics. So a little bit colder weather than here, but same time zone anyway, mostly. We also have a couple of sites in Poland.
And a bit about SensorFu. We have our main product is called SensorFu Beacon, which continuously monitors that how well the network isolation actually works. Today we will go through a couple of case examples that how we can systematically monitor some of the network isolation security policies and the case study related to that, and of course the findings related to that. But in SensorFu, we have hundreds of beacons deployed all over the world. Most of our customers are from OT environments, critical infrastructure, traditional industries, but also some governmental customers who have isolated networks. Over 80% of the customers will find out some surprises related to the network isolation, so it's really common that there's some surprises related to the network isolation. But the best of thing is that typically these things are rather easy to fix, so if you only know about those can be pretty quickly fixed. And one thing what we share together with Robert is the fact that we think that we should get back to the basics and we should do systematic testing. We are not the only one who thinks this way. 2016, Rob Joyce from NSA did a presentation for all the sysadmins and network admins in Usenix conference about how you can actually avoid that the nation-state hackers won't get into your systems. And in this presentation, he mentioned that if you concentrate to your security policies and try to make sure that there's no slip-ups, you will be in really good shape, because most of the time attackers don't need to use any 0 days or anything like that to actually get into the systems. They just spend their time to find out the weak spots, some forgotten server, some not updated server, poor passwords, as we heard from previous presentation. So the thing is how you systematically make sure that your security policies are in place. And some of these security policies are well known for really, really long time. But the question is that how well you can systematically make sure that those are in good shape. So in 2023, when he was an NSA's cybersecurity director, and there was a cybersecurity month starting, so the first tweet what he did was this one, basically showing that there's secrets related to the cybersecurity, and there's the use multi-factor authentication, encrypt at rest if possible, and then segregate your networks. And we are helping with the network isolation, and we will concentrate more about that in this presentation, what you can actually find when you systematically test that.
Yeah, so starting off, I don't know if everybody knows OT is, but operational technology, talking about in my world, that's actually, some call it cyber physical systems. That's the systems that we use to run our power plants and operations. And this is what I mean here with OT in this presentation. So, where does the risk come from OT? It's actually been very, let's say, popular in the media lately. Also from I would say reasonable concern from boards and so on, looking at the geopolitical situation and starting to asking what is our status in OT cybersecurity. But where the risk is, it's actually the convergence here, more or less. It's not a question about technology clashing, it's also technology, but it's also a cultural clash between IT and OT. Very different ways of thinking about the world. OT is all about the function. OT uses IT systems to produce the function. IT is not operating the OT in that sense. So philosophy, function first, where IT again is, well, as good as possible, or resource availability, confidentiality, and so on. There's also a huge difference in the maturity of cybersecurity between OT and IT. IT have, let's say, 25 plus years been practicing cybersecurity. You can still argue that, yeah, we have a long way to go, and we always will have a long way to go. The more we learn, the more pain we have. But looking at OT, I would say it's, well, it started up probably in about 10, 15 years ago, but we have a lot to catch up there. So we're, even today, still have some very 90s problems in OT, which are due to the fact that there's a lot of legacy, and from a functional perspective, it's not always easy or even financially viable to update these systems. And if you're looking at this picture, the Venn diagram here, I would like to point out that OT and IT are seldom two equally big balls, so to say. Usually you have one centralized IT, and OT is actually located or locally managed, so it would actually be more accurate to have this like a flowery picture, and then you think about all of the supply chain parts of OT, so you actually have a flowers with multiple dimensions here. So keep in mind that the risk goes both ways. Something that usually is discussed only how IT is a risk to OT, but it's actually also the other way around. OT can be a risk to IT. So why is the network segmentation important? And actually I was quite happy with, I don't know if you're reading through the Dragos year in review 2023 report, on page 31 they're actually discussing vulnerability management, which is one of the really tough questions in OT. They're looking at it from now, next, never prioritization of vulnerabilities, and here they point out that 68% of the vulnerabilities found in OT could actually be managed by network monitoring, network segmentation, or MFA. Not a big surprise there, to be honest. I don't know the details behind this number, how big share of each of those actually have, but it's actually nice that somebody puts this into numbers these days. So network segmentation, and we rely a lot of it, actually, even that we don't necessarily acknowledge it, but we rely a lot of it on it. So, but from a workload perspective also, if you don't have something from a network segmentation perspective that you can actually rely on, your workload on vulnerability management actually grows a lot. And in OT, when you do something, you update something, you actually need to test the functionality of the system. So it is a very work-intense activity.
All right. So short introduction about how Beacon actually works. So since the Beacon was used in this use case, it's good to you to understand that how it practically works. We have two main components in Beacon. We have a beacon and we have a beacon home. And the fundamental idea is that the beacon tries to call home with various techniques. And if it's succeeding, it provides the alert for the user or the owner of the environment. And we have multiple different techniques to test the network isolation. Typically, everybody thinks about the firewalls. And it is a common thing what may go wrong related to the network isolation. But there is, as you will see soon, other reasons why the network isolation may fail, all the way from the physical layer to the switches and the tunnels and of course the firewalls and proxies and so on. So let's dive into the case examples. First, as a background, I want to emphasize the fact that the Finnish National Cybersecurity Center has been promoting the idea of doing actually something in practice in critical infrastructure. And I really like the fact that they are not only recommending and suggesting kindly that you should do this kind of things, but they are also practically helping the ones who want to volunteer to the project. So they had the feasible study about how they can help with some fundamental cybersecurity policies, with the how they can help the critical infrastructure providers to actually make sure that those fundamental cybersecurity policies stays in place. So one of the security policies in this exercise was also related to the network isolation. And in this, participants were all part of the critical infrastructure, so over 81% of the participants actually found out some surprises related to the their network isolation. And it's good to remember that these are the critical infrastructure providers. They are the ones, typically if you ask that how you have make sure that you have a good cybersecurity posture in your organization, especially in OT world, they will answer that we trust that we have a good network isolation going on. So it's rather important to actually test it. You can find out that rather long URL from there, but take a picture, and if you want to read the report, there's other interesting stuff too. But then, let's dive into the Fortum's case.
Yeah. So going back a little bit to remind us, or remind you how we operate. So we have a lot of sites, 150 plus sites. Some of them, like here, this is a hydro site, so they're not necessarily located in the city center. Many situations they're actually unmanned, and so on. But we have also different types. So we have bigger sites like nuclear and CHPs and so on. But this is the situation that we started from. Also, when it comes to network segmentation, so that's a well-known way of handling or building up your even IT network, and it's actually one of the foundations for a defensible architecture. So we also, started this 10, 15, 20 years ago already with the network segmentation. So we actually thought we have it covered. And afterwards thinking, yeah, it was pretty good. But when you have something in place, and the question is, and you rely on it, if you don't measure that, if you don't verify it, how do you actually know that it's worth your trust? And that's actually what we aimed for when we started saying, okay, let's do this kind of, or deploy these beacons in our environment. So we have hundreds of these in our environment today.
And I think this is a good representation of the generic network topology of OT environments. If you dive into the details in operational technology environment, typically you would find out something like this. There is variations, but this is a simplified version in that sense, and many times this is the exact case also. But typically it's something like this.
Yep. So the deployment of the actual beacon goes in different ways. We use both software and device deployments. But if we're looking at the alerts that we have had, they've basically all been from software-based alerts. So this was basically the use case that we wanted to check out. And also immediately after installing it at our first site, OT environment, we had an alarm. We were a little bit surprised because we were actually very trustworthy or trusting our segmentation. So, of course, we addressed the issue, but actually there was another surprise because we had different views with IT if this was actually a bug or a feature. Meaning this was not directly what they saw as a misconfiguration, even if from an OT perspective we saw it as a misconfiguration. So, simple thing, simple observation, misconfiguration, and firewall. And there's configuration and change management. If you're looking also at your network management from an enterprise perspective, how many sub-suppliers do you actually have there? How do you verify that they're doing correct or not making mistakes? And this is actually what was here also. So it was not directly a mistake, but again, it was a long chain of suppliers and overall what we wanted to check. So configuration and change management development ideas here, or requirements, and that's actually specifically between OT and IT part. So improving the communication there. Then we had another situation. This was actually a long time after a long time. We've been doing this now for 4 years or something like that. This was, let's say, years after we started up. But then we suddenly, one day, a HMI started actually alarming. And we went to site to investigate what's actually happened. We identified that the HMI there was actually connected to the guest Wi-Fi, so the office side.
Human-machine interface.
Human-machine interface, so basically the computer that you can use to see the process details of that function there. And we had actually no idea why this was done, but it was anyway. It was connected to the Wi-Fi. Maybe some engineer got bored and wanted to surf or download something. We actually don't know that in detail. But anyway, it was connected to the guest Wi-Fi. And, well, you can, of course, go this through a procedure and say so. And, of course, it's not an adherence to procedure. That's one problem in this case. But maybe the bigger way to handle it is actually from a hardening perspective. Why was it even possible to do this? System it's here at stake was actually supplied also, of course, by a third party. There were security requirements for that delivery, but maybe we should have looked a little bit better about the delivery itself and how it actually works. Same story, you already probably guessed how it works here. Similar case, suddenly again the alarm goes off. We have a case at a remote site. Go there, have a look. And in this case, it wasn't actually the guest VLAN. We had a supplier bringing in their own 4G network or modem into that HMI or computer because they needed to do maintenance work.
And this is actually this happens rather often. There's need for, in some circumstances, for the so-called support gateways. So there's alternative ways in, and sometimes the vendor need that, but will it be implemented right way? That is another question.
And again, going back to why, not the obvious here to just ban the supplier. We needed to improve our supplier management practices, how to actually introduce them and how to do this onboarding process to be able to show that they understand what they're doing and why we are saying that something shouldn't be done. Again, not a malicious event or case in any way. Well meant, they just wanted to do their job more efficiently.
Yeah, and once again, this is a good example that with the systematic monitoring, you are able to find it out when before something bad happens, because you are proactively checking the security policies.
Yeah. And here we actually have a little bit of a same situation, but it was actually, carried out, or it was a laptop type of situation. So it actually just removed from there and put into another environment. And this is actually one of the main use cases why we wanted to also use the software-based monitoring part. So if we would have this as a separate device within the network, we wouldn't actually have identified this because it still wouldn't have alarmed, even if a device suddenly is removed from that network itself. But this was actually, when going into detail, what actually happened there. So they wanted to have run a patch. Simple case. So our solution from that was, hey, we actually need to improve on how to deliver the patches to these types of installations. Again, not a huge revelation if you're looking at from the problematics of OT, but this helped to actually visualize the issue. So we actually have data now on that we need to do it, compared to the fact that we say this is a risk that we need to approach. And then the final one, which probably is my favorite case example here. So we had one HMI who suddenly started to alarm. And It actually came from a really new IP address, something we haven't seen before. So we started investigating, and the first response we got from certain business members is, "What? Don't you even know where you have your beacons anymore?" But after some open source, let's say, intelligence, we actually found out where it was located in the same area as or the same network subnet that we had that computer was calling home from. There was actually a open webcam streaming a picture. So based on the picture, we could identify where was this actually located. Based on that, we knew exactly what happened, and we, of course, then addressed the issue. And the funny part with this, when we called up those business representatives there, they sold us the idea that it's in the box. So suddenly it actually transported or back into a box at the site. So what it actually was, well, it was a decommissioned HMI in private use. Somebody has just said that, hey, we need a nice computer. We were actually updating the HMI system of that site at the moment. So we can actually ask the question, how well is our asset management, and how well do we actually follow our procedures to decommission systems or devices? Again, a valuable insight from to help with the development, sell the idea that we need to actually do something. All right, so what we want you guys to remember that is important to check your cybersecurity policies. Do it continuously, have some sort of canary monitoring your network isolation, or do check that if MFA is really in use and so on. So try to make sure that that is actually in place. So trust but verify. One thing what I want to emphasize is also that do one thing well in many places and not necessarily many things in one place. So it's even if you are concentrating to the one cybersecurity policy, but if you deploy the capability to monitor that to all of the places in your environment or what you want to monitor, you will get surprising results because of the scalability of monitoring. And securing OT in general is not easy, but you can actually do something, and you need to start from somewhere. So it's don't look like solutions which will solve all of your problems. Many times it's so tricky to make everything happen, but start from somewhere, and believe me, you will find some results. Yes, so by these kind of systematic testing, you actually go for systematic improvement as well. This is verification of your communication channels, or the ones that should not actually be there, which was highlighted here earlier. And this is one of the problems, I think, also in OT cybersecurity today. We are too much focusing on the actual, just the threat actors or the threats, and making the fuss about that. We would actually need to start looking inwards and say, this is an engineering activity. We can engineer our systems better. I'm happy to see that many vendors have actually improved their ways of working a lot. But due to the life cycle stage, it will take years, tens of years, before we have updated the systems to actually have some kind of a level of security there. All right. So let's get back to the basics. And with this, I want to thank you all for participating, and we are ready for the questions, if there's any. Thank you.
My question is, how was the ride with the tandem bike? Was it okay?
Yeah.
Did you rehearse this at home? I mean,
absolutely.
Like how many times? Huh. All right. Any questions from the audience? I don't have them in my phone for some reason, but we have this in the room. Yes.
1, 2. Hi, Edgar's from Palo Alto Networks. Question. In terms of deployment of those software beacons, have you run into problems where vendors basically don't allow you to deploy them because, I mean, usually they supply a closed-off system?
Most of the time we see worry that something may go wrong when we do the deployment. So that's the biggest thing what we see. When we get to the same page at how our product works and how it should be deployed, typically after that, there's no technical limitations to get it running. So typically the deployment itself is really straightforward and fast. But it's more about the communication that we assure, because especially in OT world, it's really, really common that, and they are right with the fact that they shouldn't get all the different kind of things into that really, really business critical networks. One of our customers always reminds us that, well, it's only 100 million per day if something goes wrong in that network. So I really hope that there's no issues which will be caused our beacon. And so far, all good with that. But yeah, we've been able to deploy it without no other challenges.
All right. Just 1 million per day. No more questions at the point. I have one in digital world, and it starts funny. It starts how you can trust. I mean, you can't.
That's why you need to verify.
Yeah, but let me read the question, okay?
Yeah.
So, how you can trust your firewall admins have not explicitly limited your physical beacon only on firewall level, not to let through the notifications to home base?
That is a really good question, and the tricky part is that we need to balance between the being open about what we try and what we test, which means that we, for example, tell that for what address we are doing the tests. This is important sometimes if they need to do a whitelisting for some of their security IDSs or something like that. So in some sense, it is true that it's possible. However, we have some other tests which will leverage the broadcast testing, for example, which still may find out the root out of that environment, and we have had that kind of experiences too. So yeah, we need to live in both worlds in that sense. So it is possible to block it also completely.
Yeah. All right. With this, I think we thank both gentlemen here on stage. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming, and CyberSocks as well for you guys.
All right.